My name is Maya Vance, and I've spent the last 12 years keeping Viridian Dynamics from collapsing into digital dust. Not that anyone remembers that now. Back when the company was still figuring out if it wanted to be a tech firm or a glorified paper pusher, I was the one stitching together code in the dead of night, building the backbone of our client portal from scratch while everyone else was asleep or on vacation. I wasn't flashy. I didn't wear designer blazers or drop buzzwords like synergy in meetings. But when the systems groaned under pressure, when a client's data vanished or a payment gateway froze, they always came to me. Quietly, desperately, like I was the ghost in the machine who could whisper it back to life. Then came Derek Langston. He swept into the IT department like a storm in a tailored suit, charming, loud, and convinced that legacy systems were just expensive nostalgia. He called me institutional memory in team meetings, which sounded respectful until you realized he meant it like I was a dusty filing cabinet no one needed anymore. 4 months, I watched him cozy up to the board, pitching cloud migrations, AI overhauls, and modernization that sounded impressive but ignored the fact that our infrastructure was a Frankenstein of custom integrations I'd spent years stabilizing. Still, I kept my head down. I figured competence would speak for itself. I was wrong. 3 weeks ago, the new CEO, some venture capitalist named Rachel Cho, who'd never logged into our internal network, called me into her office. Her smile was polished, her tone gentle, but her words were a guillotine. "Maya, your contributions have been valued," she said, pausing just long enough for the lie to hang in the air. "But Derek's vision for a leaner, more agile tech team means some roles are being restructured. Your position is being sunset. Sunset. Like I was a sunset, pretty to look at, but ultimately temporary, replaceable by the next dawn." I didn't argue. What was the point? Derek had already painted me as a relic, a bottleneck in his grand plan to turn Viridian into something sleek and soulless. So I packed my desk on a rainy Tuesday, handed over my access badges, and walked out without fanfare. No farewell lunch. No thank you note. Just the hollow click of a security gate behind me. I thought that was the end. It wasn't. I was 2 blocks from the office, umbrella battling the downpour, when my old work phone buzzed in my coat pocket. I'd kept it. Old habits die hard, and I'd half expected a panicked call within days. But this wasn't a call. It was a flood of notifications. Slack alerts, system alarms, emergency pings from the monitoring dashboard I'd built myself. All screaming the same thing: critical failure. Core servers offline. My stomach dropped like an elevator with cut cables. I ducked under an awning, heart hammering, and pulled up the remote diagnostic portal. The login still worked. Derek hadn't bothered to revoke my credentials yet, probably assuming I'd never try to access it. Big mistake. The screen filled with red. Not just one server. Not even a cluster. The entire primary data center, the beating heart of Viridian's operations, was dark. Client portals down. Payment processing halted. Internal communications severed. Even the building's security system was flickering in and out. It wasn't a glitch. It was a blackout. And I knew, with a cold, sinking certainty, that Derek had done this. Not maliciously, maybe, but recklessly. In his rush to modernize, he pushed through a migration I'd warned him against, a forced cutover to a new cloud architecture without proper failsafes or rollback protocols. He'd ignored my detailed risk assessment, scoffing that my caution was just fear of change. Now, his shiny new system had imploded, taking everything with it. My fingers flew over the phone screen, pulling up logs, tracing the cascade failure. The root cause was exactly what I predicted. A misconfigured load balancer during the migration had triggered a feedback loop, overwhelming the core database servers until they crashed. And because Derek had disabled the legacy backup systems I'd maintained, the obsolete, ones he deemed wasteful, there was no fallback, no safety net, just nothing. A grim smile touched my lips. Obsolete, ha! I didn't call Derek. I didn't call Rachel Cho. Instead, I opened my personal laptop, still damp from the rain, and fired up the secure tunnel I'd coded years ago, a backdoor I'd built for emergencies, hidden deep in the network's architecture. It was a skeleton key, known only to me, designed to bypass all front-end systems and access the raw server layer directly. I'd never used it. Until now. The connection took hold. Lines of code scrolled across my screen as I navigated the crippled infrastructure. It was like walking through a ghost town. Empty processes, dead connections, the digital equivalent of a city after an apocalypse. But I knew these streets. I'd built half of them. My fingers moved with a rhythm born of a decade of midnight fire drills. I started isolating the corrupted nodes, rerouting traffic through the few surviving auxiliary servers, and manually initiating the cold start sequence on the primary database cluster. It was painstaking, delicate work, like performing open-heart surgery on a patient who'd flatlined. Hours bled together. Rain turned to mist, then to a pale, sickly dawn. My coffee went cold. My back ached. But slowly, agonizingly, the red lights on my dashboard began to flicker, then turn amber, then, one by one, green. Just as the first client portal blinked back online, my personal phone rang. Unknown number. I answered, voice rough from disuse. Maya. It was Derek. He sounded like he hadn't slept, his usual confidence shredded. Maya, thank God. We can't get anything back up. The cloud provider's engineers are stumped. They're talking days to restore from backups, but the backups, they're corrupted. Rachel's furious. Clients are screaming. We're hemorrhaging money every minute. I stayed silent, watching the final database node stabilize on my screen. Maya, please, he whispered, the arrogance gone, replaced by raw panic. You built the system. You're the only one who knows it inside out. We need you. Come back. Just fix this. Name your price. The irony was almost too rich. The man who declared me obsolete was begging me to resurrect the very thing he'd broken trying to replace me. I could picture him in his glass-walled office, suit rumpled, staring at a sea of red alerts, realizing too late that institutional memory wasn't a liability, it was the foundation. I'm not coming back, Derek, I said, my voice calm, steady. But I can tell you how to stabilize the core cluster. It's fragile. One wrong move, and it'll crash again. Permanently. He breathed a shaky sigh of relief. Yes, tell me. Anything. I leaned back, the glow of the laptop screen reflecting in my tired eyes. Outside, the city was waking up, oblivious to the digital chaos that had gripped Viridian Dynamics. I thought about the years of thankless work, the late nights, the way my warnings had been dismissed as the grumblings of a dinosaur. I thought about walking out in the rain, feeling erased. Listen carefully, I said, and began to dictate the first command. It was a simple instruction, but it required precise syntax, a syntax only someone who'd lived in these systems for 12 years would know. And Derek, don't skip any steps. And for God's sake, don't let your new agile team touch anything until I say so. He agreed instantly, frantically typing as I spoke. I guided him through the initial triage, watching remotely as the systems held. But I knew this was just the surface. The real damage was deeper, the corrupted transaction logs, the orphaned client data, the security vulnerabilities his botched migration had exposed. Fixing that wouldn't take hours. It would take weeks. And it would require someone who understood not just the code, but the history, the quirks, the hidden dependencies, the things Derek had arrogantly dismissed as legacy baggage. As I walked him through the next sequence, a different kind of plan began to form in my mind. Not revenge, exactly. Not the petty kind. But justice. The kind that makes people see what they've thrown away. Derek needed me. Company needed me. And they were going to learn, in the most expensive, humiliating way possible, exactly what obsolete really meant. Because obsolete things don't save you when your world collapses. Obsolete things don't hold the keys to your survival. Obsolete things don't get to decide whether you live or die. I kept talking, my voice low and precise, feeding Derek just enough rope to keep the systems breathing, but not enough to truly fix them. Let him sweat. Let Rachel Cho realize her visionary hire had nearly sunk the company in his first major move. Let the board understand that competence isn't measured in buzzwords or fancy suits, but in who shows up when the lights go out. The rain had stopped. A weak sun struggled through the clouds. On my screen, the Viridian Dynamics network was stable for now. But it was a house of cards, balanced on the edge of a knife. And I was the only one who knew how to keep it from falling. Next command, I said, and Derek scrambled to obey, his voice tight with a fear he'd never known before. The fear of realizing he'd broken something he couldn't fix. The fear of needing the very person he'd tried to erase. I didn't smile. Not yet. But inside, something cold and sharp was beginning to thaw. They called me obsolete. Fine. Let them see what an obsolete woman could do when the world they built came crashing down. Let them learn that some foundations aren't meant to be replaced. They're meant to be respected. And if they wouldn't respect me, well, I still held the keys. And I knew exactly how long this fragile peace would last. Long enough for them to beg. Long enough for them to understand. Long enough for me to decide what came next. 3 days passed. Viridian Dynamics limped along on life support, client portals flickering in and out, invoices delayed, support tickets piling up like digital tombstones. Derek followed my instructions to the letter, his voice growing hoarser with every call, his confidence eroded down to raw nerves. He'd stopped asking why and just repeated, "Got it," like a penitent reciting a prayer he didn't understand. But I wasn't fixing it. Not really. I was keeping the patient breathing while the infection spread. The deeper corruption, the mismatched data schemas, the broken authentication tokens, the silent data leaks from his half-baked cloud integration, those were still festering. And every time Derek tried to optimize something on his own, I'd get an alert. Another red flag. Another near collapse. I'd have to quietly patch from my kitchen table, sipping cheap coffee, and watching the sunrise over a city that had no idea how close a multi-billion-dollar company had come to digital extinction. Then, on the fourth morning, Rachel Cho called. Not Derek. Her. I let it ring twice before answering. Maya Vance. Maya. Her voice was different. Less polished CEO, more exhausted human. I need to see you. No, I said simply. There was a pause. I could almost hear her recalibrating. Please. Not as your former employer. Not even as the CEO. Just as someone who made a catastrophic mistake. I almost laughed. But I remember the look on her face when she'd fired me. So certain. So clean, like she was pruning dead weight from a healthy tree. She hadn't known she was cutting the roots. Where? I asked. She named a quiet cafe 2 blocks from Viridian's tower, neutral ground. No boardrooms. No power plays. Just 2 women, and the wreckage between them. I arrived first. Sat by the window, hands wrapped around a steaming mug, watching the rain return. She came in 10 minutes later, coat damp, hair slightly frayed, no entourage. She looked 10 years older than she had 3 weeks ago. She slid into the seat across from me. Didn't order. Just looked at me, really looked for the first time. I read your risk assessment, she said quietly. The one Derek dismissed as resistance to innovation. It was thorough. Brilliant, actually. You predicted this exact failure mode down to the load balancer configuration. I nodded. I did. And you tried to stop it. I did. She swallowed. Why didn't you say more? Why didn't you escalate? Because, I said, meeting her eyes. You'd already decided I was the past. And Derek was the future. No one listens to ghosts. She flinched. I'm sorry, Maya. Truly. I trusted the wrong person. I confused confidence for competence. Silence settled between us, thick with regret and rain. I can't undo what happened, she said finally. But I can fix it. I've suspended Derek's authority over all infrastructure decisions. The board's in an uproar, but I don't care. We're hemorrhaging clients, and the only thing keeping us from total collapse is, well, you. She leaned forward. Come back. Not as a legacy resource. Not as a temporary fix. As chief technology architect. Full authority. Full budget. Report only to me. Rebuild it your way. I studied her. The desperation was real. The humility, too. But trust isn't rebuilt in a single conversation. What about Derek? I asked. He's being reassigned, she said flatly, to a strategic advisory role, with no access to systems. He'll be supervised. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. And if I say no? I asked. She didn't blink. Then we'll probably fold within a month. And a lot of good people will lose their jobs, including some who stood by you when you left. That stung. Because I knew she was right. There were folks in IT, junior devs I'd mentored, sysadmins who'd stayed late with me during outages, who didn't deserve to pay for Derek's arrogance. I took a slow sip of coffee. I'll come back, I said. But on my terms. She nodded eagerly. Anything. First, I said, you publicly acknowledge what happened. Not just internally. To clients. To the press. Say you rushed a migration without proper safeguards. Say you underestimated the value of institutional knowledge. No blaming Derek. Take the hit yourself. She paled but didn't argue. Done. Second, I continued, you reinstate everyone laid off in the restructuring. Not just me. The whole team. They kept this place running while you were chasing shiny objects. Her jaw tightened, but she nodded. Agreed. Third, I said, leaning in, you never, ever again let someone who can't read a server log dictate technical strategy. Competence isn't optional in tech. It's oxygen. She exhaled. Noted. Permanently. I held her gaze for a long moment. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out a small, unmarked USB drive. I slid it across the table. What's this? She asked. The full recovery protocol, I said. Not just a band-aid. The real fix. It'll take 6 weeks. It'll cost more than Derek's cloud contract. But it'll be stable. Secure. And it'll last. Her fingers closed around the drive like it was sacred. Thank you. I stood. Don't thank me yet. I'm not doing this for you, Rachel. I'm doing it for the people who believed in this company before it forgot its own soul. She stood too. Will you at least let me buy you lunch? I shook my head, pulling my coat on. I've got servers to wake up. 2 months later, Viridian Dynamics wasn't just stable, it was stronger. We'd rebuilt the core with modern tools, yes, but layered over the robust foundation I'd always maintained. No more reckless migrations. No more disruptive overhauls without stress tests. And every junior engineer now spent their first week shadowing the veterans, learning not just how the systems worked, but why they worked that way. Derek, he lasted 3 weeks in his advisory role before quietly resigning. Last I heard, he was consulting for a startup that promised AI-driven disruption. Good luck to them. Rachel kept her word. She issued a public statement, taking full responsibility. She reinstated the team. And she never once questioned my architecture again. As for me, I sit in my new office now, not bigger, but quieter, with a window that overlooks the city skyline. My title is Chief Technology Architect, but the people who matter still call me the ghost in the machine. And sometimes, late at night, when the servers hum peacefully and the dashboards glow green, I allow myself a small, quiet smile. Because obsolete things don't rebuild empires from ashes. But I did. 6 months later, Viridian Dynamics didn't just survive, it thrived. The systems I rebuilt became a case study in resilience, not just within the company, but across the industry. We'd proven that modernization didn't have to mean erasure, that honoring what worked could be the smartest innovation of all. Client trust, once fractured, returned stronger than before. New partnerships bloomed. Even our stock price, which had nosedived during the outage, climbed steadily upward. Rachel Cho promoted me again, not to a fancier title, but to a seat on the executive leadership team. You don't just keep the lights on, Maya, she told me during our quarterly offsite, her voice warm with respect. You remind us why we built this place in the first place. I kept my office small, but I made one change. I hung a framed print on the wall. It was a screenshot of the server dashboard from the night of the crash. Every indicator read, screaming failure. Beneath it, in simple black letters, I'd added a quote I'd whispered to myself that rainy night. They called me obsolete. Then the world went dark. It wasn't arrogance. It was a reminder, to me, and to anyone who walked in, that true value isn't measured in trends or titles, but in who shows up when everything falls apart. Derek never reached out, and I didn't expect him to. But I heard he'd started mentoring young engineers at a coding boot camp, teaching them not just how to build, but how to listen, to systems, to history, to the quiet voices who know the cost of cutting corners. As for my team, they threw me a surprise party on my 1-year anniversary back. Not because of my title, but because I'd fought for them when no one else would. We ordered pizza, laughed too loud in the server room, which I'd insisted stay open plan, no glass cages, and toasted with cheap sparkling cider. Later that evening, I stood alone on the rooftop terrace of the Viridian building, the city lights glittering below like a circuit board come alive. My phone buzzed, a message from Lena, one of the junior devs I brought back. Just fixed a bug in the billing module using your old notes. You're a legend, Maya. I smiled, tucking the phone away. I wasn't a ghost anymore. I wasn't obsolete. I was exactly where I was meant to be, anchored in the past, building the future, and finally, gloriously seen. And as the cool night air brushed my face, I knew one thing for certain. Some foundations aren't meant to be replaced. They're meant to rise,